My husband slid divorce papers across my dining table with a smile. He had no idea I'd moved $500 million out of his reach 7 days earlier. I heard him at 12 minutes past midnight. Low voice. Controlled. The specific register he used in conference calls when he was managing someone, not talking to them, managing them, behind the closed office door at the end of our hallway. I had gotten up for water, barefoot on the hardwood, 3 steps from the bedroom door when his voice stopped me. She still doesn't suspect anything, Nathan said. I stopped breathing, stood completely still in the dark hallway, cold floor under my feet, heart doing something I could feel in my throat. Almost done, he said. A pause, the other voice too low to make out through the door. Then Nathan. She still trusts me with all of it. I stood there for 4 more seconds. Then I walked back to the bedroom, quiet and even, and I got into bed and pulled the covers to my shoulder and lay with my eyes open in the dark. He came out of the office 11 minutes later. I heard the door close, his footsteps, the careful way he moved across the bedroom in the dark, the way he always moved when he thought I was sleeping and didn't want to wake me. He slid under the covers. He brushed the hair back from my cheek with one hand, gently, just like always, and he whispered, "Couldn't sleep." I kept my breathing slow, long and even, like a woman asleep, and I started planning. I need to tell you who I am, because this story doesn't work without it. My name is Serena Voss. I am 44 years old. I built Voss Media Group from a literary agency I started at 27 with a client list of 9 writers and a desk in a shared office space in Midtown. The agency became a production company. The production company became a media group. Voss Media now holds the rights to 63 published properties, has produced 19 adaptations across streaming and film, owns a brownstone on West 76th Street that I purchased outright in my own name in the 3rd year of the company's existence, and generates in a good year somewhere between $40 and $60 million in revenue. I say this not to perform wealth. I say it because Nathan Cole married a woman with a $500 million estate, which means the word timing in a midnight phone call is not a small word. It is a catastrophic one. Nathan and I met when he was consulting for a firm that was considering a distribution partnership with Voss Media. He was 40 at the time, sharp, fluent in the language of creative industries in a way most finance people weren't. He knew who the writers were. He had opinions about adaptation strategy. He made me feel, for the first time in years of being the only person in the room who understood both the creative and financial sides of my company, that someone was genuinely meeting me where I stood. We dated for 2 years. I was careful, or I thought I was. I had my attorney, Diana Park, review the prenuptial agreement 4 times before I signed it. Diana had been my best friend since sophomore year of college and had been my estate attorney for 12 years. A partner at Park, Elkins and Wren, the kind of woman who walked into rooms full of wealthy men and made them nervous without trying. The prenup was tight. Premarital assets were mine, full stop. Any assets I brought into the marriage, any company equity that existed before the wedding date, any intellectual property under Voss Media's umbrella, mine. Diana had been privately not enthusiastic about Nathan. He's charming, she told me, the week before the wedding. That's not a compliment from you, I said. It's an observation, she said. I married him anyway, 3 years ago. Small ceremony in the brownstone garden, 30 people, peonies everywhere. For 2 years and 8 months, I believed I had been right, and Diana had been overcautious. Then I heard him in the hallway at 12 minutes past midnight. The morning after, I opened the banking app while Nathan was still in the shower. My hands weren't shaking from fear. They were shaking from fury, which is a different thing entirely. Fear is diffuse. Fury is concentrated, specific, and extremely useful if you don't let it move faster than your brain. The withdrawals were small. That was the design of them. $500 here, $1,000 there, $1,700, $2,200. Small enough, spaced widely enough, that they read as noise in the account history of a company that processed hundreds of transactions monthly. But I was looking now. Specifically, deliberately looking. Dozens of them. Spread across 3 months. A quiet bruise running through the account history. Nathan came into the kitchen while I was still staring at the screen. He poured coffee. He was relaxed in the way of someone who has no reason to be otherwise. Something wrong? He asked. A few charges look unfamiliar to me, I said. His smile stayed exactly where it was. The same smile. The conference call management smile. Oh, those. Casual. Slightly apologetic. Small investment placements through the subsidiary sweep accounts. I forgot to mention them. Several dozen times? I said. His fingers tightened on the coffee mug. Barely. Almost nothing. But I was watching for it. You know how cash sweeps work, he said. I didn't want to bore you with the mechanics. Of course, I said. His shoulders relaxed. Mine did not. 2 nights later, he left his phone on the kitchen table. I heard the shower start upstairs. I looked at the phone for 60 seconds. Exactly 60. I counted them. Then I picked it up. One unread message from a number with no contact name. Just digits. Send her the Helion files. Keep her in the dark. Almost done. I scrolled up to Nathan's reply. Sent 20 minutes earlier. Not until I serve her. Timing matters. I put the phone back. Same angle. Same position. He had a habit of leaving it face down with the corner aligned to the edge of the table, and I replaced it with the precision of someone who has learned that details are everything. I walked to the powder room. I ran cold water over my wrists until I could breathe at a normal rate again. Not until I serve her. Serve. Legal language. Deliberate. Timing matters. He had said those exact words to whoever was on the other end of that midnight call. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a phrase he was using consistently, which meant it was a phrase with a specific meaning in a specific plan. A plan that involved files called the Helion files, keeping me in the dark, and a service of papers that was already prepared and waiting for the right moment. I dried my hands. I walked upstairs. I got into bed. I lay in the dark and I built the outline of what needed to happen in my mind, in order, with timelines, the way I had built every business decision I had ever made, not from emotion, but from architecture. What exists? What is at risk? What can be moved? How fast? By whom? At 7:14 the next morning, I called Diana Park. She answered on the second ring. No hello. Tell me everything, she said. She already knew from my voice that this was not a routine call. I told her. The midnight conversation, the withdrawals, the phone message. Not until I serve her. The Helion files, whatever those were. Timing matters. Diana was quiet for 3 full seconds. 3 seconds is a long time for Diana Park. How much is exposed? She said. Close to 500 million. The brownstone, royalty streams, trust assets, company equity, adaptation rights on 14 properties, investment accounts, everything. She exhaled once, short, controlled. We are not hiding anything, she said, and I heard her shift into the register she used when she was moving from assessment to action. But we are going to separate what is documented as yours, fortify what is yours, and put your estate somewhere your husband cannot walk through it carrying a smile and a set of papers he's been timing for 3 months. Can we do it before he moves? We start in an hour, she said. Come to the office. Don't stop anywhere else. Don't take any calls from Nathan and don't change anything in your behavior at home. Understood. And Serena, a pause. Trust no one in that house until this is done. 72 hours. That was how long it took Diana and her team, herself, her associate Marcus Webb, and Lena Sorensen, a trust and estate specialist Diana had worked with for 9 years, to build the architecture of protection around what was mine. We moved premarital assets into a protected trust that predated the marriage by explicit documentation. We transferred the brownstone into the trust's direct ownership with amended title records. We revoked Nathan's signing authority on the 3 subsidiary accounts where he had had limited access. We froze 2 dormant investment accounts he hadn't touched yet, but that existed in structures he knew about. We amended the royalty collection instructions on 11 properties so that payments routed through Voss Media's primary accounts, rather than the subsidiary sweep accounts he had been quietly bleeding. We locked every door, every window, every channel he knew about, and 3 he didn't. Every move legal. Documented by 3 attorneys. Filed where it needed to be filed. I came home each night and slept beside him. He kissed my shoulder on the second night and told me I was his world. I watched his reflection in the dark window above the headboard, and I kept my breathing long and slow. On the 3rd evening, he came home with Thai food and a bottle of Sancerre. He set them on the kitchen counter with the specific energy of a man who is feeling generous because he believes he's about to win something. Thought we could have a quiet night, he said. Perfect, I said. I poured the wine. I served the food. I listened to him talk about a podcast he'd been listening to, and I responded at all the right places. He had absolutely no idea. 4 days after Diana and her team finished, Nathan came home too polished for a Tuesday. Navy suit, silver tie, the briefcase he only carried when he was going somewhere that required performance rather than work. He set it beside the dining room chair instead of in the office, which meant he'd had it with him but hadn't needed it at a meeting, which meant the meeting had been here. The papers were in the briefcase. He didn't touch the food on the sideboard. He sat down across from me. We need to talk, he said. His voice had the weight of something he'd rehearsed. Not grief exactly. A performance of reluctance. The face of a man who would prefer not to do this but finds himself sadly obligated. He slid the folder across the table. I looked at it. Divorce petition. Already filed. His attorney's name on the letterhead. Oliver Marsh, a litigator I knew by reputation as someone who specialized in high asset dissolution and was very good at making complicated financial structures look simple in court. Nathan had retained Oliver Marsh, which meant he had retained Oliver Marsh before the Thai food and the Sancerre and the "You're my world in the dark." We've grown apart, Serena. He said my name the old way, the soft way. I don't want this to become painful for either of us. I opened the folder, read it, all of it, every page, closed it, slid it back across the table. Before we go further, I said, there's something you should know. A shadow crossed his face, small, controlled immediately. What? I already moved everything, I said. He blinked. Once, twice. The blinking of a man whose internal calculation has just returned an error. What does that mean? The brownstone, the royalty streams, the equity, the investment accounts, the adaptation rights on 14 properties. All of it. Properly documented, properly filed, properly defended. I paused. A week ago. The color left his face. Not quickly. Slowly. Like a light being turned down by a dimmer switch. You can't do that, he said. I did. Serena, he said my name again. Soft, slow, the same inflection he'd used when he brushed my hair back in the dark and whispered couldn't sleep. The version of my name that had for 3 years made me feel seen. It landed now like a technique I'd already identified. You were right about one thing, I said quietly. His eyes sharpened. Timing matters. Recognition. Immediate and total. I watched it move across his face. Not guilt, not regret, not even fear. Pure, cold recognition. The expression of someone who has realized that the variable they failed to account for was the person sitting across from them. You went through my phone, he said. I protected my life, I said. His jaw tightened. You just made this ugly. No, I said. You made it ugly when you told someone on the phone that she still trusts me with all of it. He stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. For a moment, he was entirely still, standing at the end of my dining room table, in the suit he wore when he needed people to trust him, with no soft answer ready. We'll see each other in court, he said. I stood too. Try, I said. He tried. 3 days later, my assistant Priya walked into my office at Voss Media at 10:40 a.m., holding a printed page and looking like she'd found something she didn't want to have found. She placed it on my desk without speaking first. An anonymous post on an industry forum. Legal Affairs and Litigation, a site used primarily by entertainment and publishing attorneys. Founder conceals assets from marital estate using company subsidiary accounts. Is Voss Media's governance structure hiding more than royalties? And in the comments, attributed to an account created 6 days earlier with no prior post history, it's Serena Voss. Someone should look at Whitman Media's transaction records. The name in the comment was wrong. It didn't matter. The intent was clear. Nathan couldn't reach the money through the courts. Not yet, not easily, not without a fight. He was no longer certain he could win. So he came for my name instead, for my company's reputation, for the thing that, in my industry, was the actual asset, trust. I called Diana before Priya had left my office. I saw it, Diana said. She had a Google alert on my name. We're filing a cease and desist within the hour, and then we're going to find out who paid for this. Can you trace it? The post's metadata might have been scrubbed, she said, but the reposts won't be as careful. Give me until end of day. By 6:00 p.m., Diana had pulled the forum post's IP trail through 3 reposts and 2 secondary accounts, and found a payment record from a consulting LLC registered to a Nathan Cole affiliate entity. Payment memo, litigation support services, invoice date, 72 hours before the post appeared. The LLC had paid an individual named Felix Strand. Diana sent me his name with a 2-sentence note. Document consultant. Specialty. Asset schedule fabrication and strategic litigation support. This is not a person who does legitimate work. I read those 2 sentences twice. Then I called her back. How bad? I said. He's good at what he does, Diana said. He builds paper, fake asset schedules, forged transaction histories, altered signatures. He gives litigators things to point to in court, things that look real until someone checks the metadata. Nathan took a signed copy of my novel from the bookshelf in the study, I said slowly. I had noticed it missing 2 weeks earlier and assumed it had been misplaced. A first edition. My handwriting is on the title page. Silence on Diana's end. That's what he was going to use, she said. To do what? To put your signature on documents you never signed, she said. Serena, he was building a parallel paper trail. Accounts you don't have. Transactions you didn't make. A version of your financial history designed to make it look like you moved assets fraudulently. I sat with that for a long moment. He was going to use my own signature against me in court. Yes? How far along is he? Far enough that Felix Strand has already billed him for completed deliverables, Diana said, which means the documents exist, which means we need to find them before they're submitted. The courtroom was all wood paneling and controlled fluorescent light and the particular silence of a room where serious things happen and everyone present knows it. Judge Renata Moore presided, 57 years old, 23 years on the bench, a reputation for patience with attorneys and precision with facts. She had reviewed the preliminary filings and had, Diana told me before we entered, flagged several inconsistencies in Nathan's documentation during pre-trial review. Nathan sat across from me in the suit he wore when he needed people to trust him. Oliver Marsh sat beside him, composed, taking notes. Diana didn't raise her voice once during the entire proceeding. She walked Judge Moore through everything methodically. The fake asset schedule. Exhibit A, the document, created in Felix Strand's system 11 days before submission, time-stamped at 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. Metadata showing the file originated on a device registered to Strand's consulting address in Hoboken. Exhibit B, the routing numbers on the fabricated transaction history, 3 of which corresponded to accounts at institutions that had not used that routing format since 2019. Exhibit C, a signature comparison conducted by Dr. Vivian Lau, a forensic document examiner with 18 years of practice and testimony in 43 court cases, who had compared the signature on Nathan's submitted documents with verified samples of my signature from authenticated sources. Dr. Lau's finding, the signature had been mechanically flattened from a handwritten source. The specific term she used was compression artifact, consistent with a photograph of a handwritten signature being digitally modified for use on a typed document. He had taken my autograph from a signed book and tried to build a court case on it. Diana then placed the hotel footage on the screen. Lobby of the Whitmore Hotel on Lexington Avenue. Nathan, standing in the lobby at 4:22 p.m. on a Tuesday 3 weeks earlier, shaking hands with a man in a gray suit. The man in the gray suit was Felix Strand, confirmed by a driver's license photo provided by the investigator Diana had retained. Carolyn Diaz, 15 years in private investigation, specializing in financial fraud and litigation misconduct. Nathan stared at the screen. Then he looked at me. All the performance was gone. Just raw, unprocessed anger. The anger of someone who had built something carefully and watched it come apart in public and couldn't control the moment of its unraveling. Judge Moore set down her pen. She looked at Nathan's attorney, then at Nathan. Mr. Cole, she said, in the careful voice of a judge who has decided something and is now articulating it precisely for the record, your financial documentation contains internal inconsistencies that I find difficult to attribute to error. The timestamps contradict the timeline you have offered. The routing numbers contradict institutional records, and a forensic document examiner has testified that a signature submitted as authentic shows characteristics of digital manipulation. Oliver Marsh stood to object. Judge Moore held up one finger. "You'll have an opportunity," she said. "I'm not finished." She looked at Nathan directly. "Litigation is a serious instrument," she said. "It is not a tool for constructing leverage from material that does not tell the truth. I don't know what you believed you were doing when you engaged this strategy, Mr. Cole, but I know what it looks like from here." She set the pen down completely. "Mr. Cole's claims are denied in their entirety. Ms. Voss's trust documentation is recognized as properly established and predating the marriage as filed. Legal fees are awarded to the petitioner. The submitted exhibits are referred to the district attorney's office for review of potential document fraud." Oliver Marsh made one more attempt. Nobody in the room was listening anymore. Outside the courtroom, in the marble corridor that always smelled like old stone and central heating, Nathan approached me. Diana stepped forward. I shook my head slightly. "Let him speak." He stood in front of me with the suit slightly wrong now. Tie loosened at some point during the morning, the composed executive version of him reassembled but imperfectly, and he said, without the soft voice, without the performance of it, "You were never supposed to be this hard. Not angry, not threatening, just hollow." And that sentence told me everything I had needed to know for 3 years. He had not married me. He had married a version of me that he had decided existed. The woman who built a $500 million estate and then trusted someone else to manage it. The woman who slept through midnight phone calls. The woman who saw unusual withdrawals and believed the explanation about cash sweeps. The woman who never checked. He had lived with that woman for 3 years and had planned around her very carefully. He had never once looked at who was actually there. I walked away without answering. Not because I had nothing to say, because everything that needed to be said had already been entered into evidence. Felix Strand's office address turned out to be a mail drop above a nail salon in Flushing, confirmed by Carolyn Diaz on the same afternoon the ruling came down. His phone was already disconnected. His website had been taken down sometime between 9 a.m. and noon on the day of the hearing, but Diana was already 3 steps ahead. She had located Owen Park, a former contractor of Strand's, who had worked on 3 previous cases involving fabricated asset schedules, and who had, when Diana's investigator reached him and explained the current situation, decided that signing an affidavit was a significantly better outcome than appearing in a courtroom adjacent to Nathan Cole's document fraud case. Owen Park's affidavit, signed the following Tuesday, described in detail the methodology Strand used for signature manipulation and confirmed that he had personally assisted in the preparation of materials for the Voss case. The district attorney's office opened a formal investigation within 2 weeks. Oliver Marsh filed a motion to withdraw from further representation of Nathan Cole 3 days after the investigation was announced. It was granted. Nathan's appeal, filed by new counsel he had retained at significant expense from what remained of his liquid assets, was denied 4 months later in a ruling that took 11 minutes to read into the record, and that cited, among other things, Judge Moore's original findings and the Owen Park affidavit. The brownstone is still mine. The royalties still flow to the correct accounts. The adaptation rights on 14 properties generate income that belongs to Voss Media and, by extension, to me. Diana Park has an updated copy of every document in the estate for her files, stored in a system with redundant backups, because Diana has always understood that the work of protecting something is never fully finished. I am not, I want to be honest about this, entirely undamaged. 3 years is a long time to build a life with someone who is building something else inside it. There is a version of grief for that which has nothing to do with money. Grief for the dinners and the small ordinary moments and the specific feeling of believing someone fully. That grief is real, and I don't dismiss it. But here is what I know about grief. It does not require you to be passive inside it. I grieved and I moved money. I grieved and I called Diana. I grieved and I sat in a courtroom and I watched the paper architecture of Nathan's plan get dismantled, exhibit by exhibit, while I kept my face perfectly still and my hands folded in my lap. Grief and preparation are not opposites. I learned that in a hallway at 12 minutes past midnight, standing barefoot on cold hardwood, listening to my husband say she still trusts me with all of it. He was wrong about that, as it turned out. The trust had already been somewhere else for a long time. He had just never looked closely enough to see where.